Manager of Alumni Relations at Johnson & Wales University. Thank you for joining us for Sip with JWU, Black-owned wines. We are excited to bring this program to you virtually and look forward to learning about these wines to enjoy and support BIPOC winemakers. Before we get started, I'd like to review a few housekeeping items. This session is being recorded and will be available for future viewing. With the exception of the presenters, all participants have been muted. Please turn your camera on once the presenter has started so we can see you then. Set your view to speaker view in the top right corner of your screen. This will be the best way to see our presenter. This will be a very interactive session, so be prepared to answer and ask questions. And if you have a question, please use the raise hand feature and the presenter or myself will call on you directly to unmute and ask your question. Or if you'd like, you can type your question into the chat function at the bottom of your screen. Since we can't be together in person for this program, please keep it social. Feel free to share pictures of your at-home setup or a selfie or a photo of who you are enjoying this session with. Be sure to tag at JWU alumni in your posts on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I'd like to introduce today's presenter, Ray Sholes. Ray is a proud alum of the class of 2010 from the North Miami campus, where he earned his bachelor's in food service management. Ray is a certified sommelier with the Court of Master Sommeliers. He is known not only for his incredible tasting abilities and vast knowledge, but also for his friendly, relaxed, and professional approach to wine education. Growing up in Compton, California, Ray admits he comes from a world where an education in fine wines, sake, craft brews, and spirits did not exist. His fascination for wine took off after graduation from Johnson & Wales University, and his thirst for wine has taken him across the globe to vineyards where he had learned to and improve his skills beyond textbooks. He has spent over 10 years in the restaurant and hospitality industry where he has wine list creation, dynamic staff training, and restaurant management under his belt. When he isn't hosting tasting events, he works as the sommelier at Michael's Genuine Food and Drink in the Design District of Miami, Florida. Please join me in welcoming tonight's host, Ray Sholes.
Hello, everyone. Hello and hello. Lauren, thank you so much for that introduction. I mean, can I hire you to do further introductions for me? Because, that was really wonderful. Sorry, JWU, I'm just trying to shoot my shot. That's what you taught me. So thank you so much for that introduction. Again, Ray Sholes, certified sommelier. I do a couple of different things besides what was mentioned before, and I want to touch on a couple of those things. So wine education is, at the very forefront, but I also do some things like YouTube content create. I do something called the Black-owned Wine Review, where I review Black-owned wines that I think are absolutely fantastic and deserve a little bit more promotion and perpetuation and really just more coverage, if you will, or exposure. So I do that for that particular reason. I also do plenty of wine judging competitions here locally in Miami, also in Texas. There's 2 competitions that I participate there as well. And a whole host of different educational things as well, which include actually visiting different college campuses and teaching about wine. I'm also a Roots Fund scholar. If you're not familiar with the Roots Fund, I would highly recommend you looking into Googling the Roots Fund or just checking out, there's a link in my bio on my Instagram at The Royal Vines. And you can find out more about the Roots Fund there, but I'm also a Roots Fund scholar and brand ambassador, who the director of that particular organization is also a Johnson & Wales alumni. So keeping it in the family. Without further ado, I would love to get started and start talking about some wine. All right. So now what we're going to be doing today, obviously you already know, you've signed up. Hopefully you have your wines with you. I'm looking forward to seeing what wines you do have. And we're going to jump right into it. So one of our very first wines that we're going to talk about today is going to be Longevity Wines. Now, this is a brand that kind of jump-started the Black-owned wine review for me. And one of the first things that, one of the first wines that I actually reviewed on YouTube was Phil Long's Longevity. I think his Petit Verdot. I did a Cabernet Sauvignon and one more wine that he produces there at his winery. So let me start by telling you the story about Phil Long. Phil Long grew up in California, Southern California, and he ended up meeting this beautiful young lady that you see pictured here, uh, Deborah. And they have a dog, and like they meet each other, they fall in love, and they get married. They have children, and they always loved wine. And Phil was actually making wine in his garage out in Livermore, and making wine, and eventually it kind of caught on and ended up turning it into a labor of love and forming longevity wines. Now, longevity wines, if you see the label and you have that particular wine in front of you, and if you take a look at that label, on that label, you have this heart logo. Now, Deborah has left us and has passed on. But what Phil Long used to do is for their anniversaries, for any of their special moments together, he would always get her hearts. She was in love with hearts. Like some people like stars, some people like dolphins, like people like different things. Her thing was hearts. So the shape of the actual logo is a heart, and if you look a little bit closer on the label, you can see that there's little tiny hearts with vines and flowers, and those kind of represent the love that they have for each other and the love that they had for the wine, and how those all came together. Phil Long also is the president of the Association of African American Vintners, and based in California. And he uses this particular platform to bring African Americans together in this particular wine industry, and also he also helps with scholarships, mentorship, job placements, and things of that nature for people that look like himself, look like myself, and people of color in general. Um, and I want to pause for a quick second to talk about why that's important. Um, and it's important because one statistic, and that statistic is 0.1% of all the wineries that we have here in the nation are owned by someone of color. Not 1%, not 10%, but 0.1%. Right. So I think it's really incredible that I think these wines that we're going to be tasting today are incredible, but I also think that they do a really great job of doing other things in their portfolio. So I highly encourage everyone to look into these brands and look into what else they do, and maybe even support. Go to their website, check out some of their other wines, and support that way. But without further ado, I do like these to be interactive. I like to talk, and I love to see in the chat, different comments and things of that nature. But I'm done talking. Let's get into some wine. Let's go ahead and open up this longevity Chardonnay, and let's go ahead and taste. So I'm pouring up mine here, and if you already started, like I did, because I had a glass before we all got started here. Please let me know what you all are drinking or what you think of the wine, and I'll walk you through here. So longevity wines, I have the 2019 Chardonnay. You might have the 2018. I believe the 2019 is the current release. But when you first look at the wine, you want to kind of like tilt it a little bit and kind of look at that color. It has a really nice, beautiful, like yellow color. You can see right through it. Looks nice, cool. And then we want to go ahead and smell it. And when you smell this wine, you guys let me know, what are you getting, and what are you getting on this? And please feel free to leave it in the chat or chime in. I'd love to know. So for me, I'm picking up on, there's a little bit of this cheesy quality, kind of like cheese rind. There's some beautiful stone fruit here, like pears and a little bit of nectarine. And then there's some tropical fruit on the wine as well. Whew. Let's taste it. Ooh. That was kind of a big sip. Oh yeah. Oh, there's also kind of like this pineapple banana thing going on too. So lots of tropical fruit going on here. All right, please thumbs up if you love it. Thumbs down if you're like, ah, it's okay. Mm, mm. That's a really good one. So let's go ahead and we can wrap this one up, and let's go ahead and move on to our next one. So clean finish, yes, it is a very clean finish. But does it linger? I wonder. Do you all think that this wine lingers? Like, does it last for a long time? Mm,
Mine lingered for a little bit.
hmm Not for too long, but definitely lingers for a little bit. And it's got really good acidity. So like the way you can tell that a wine has really good acidity is you put the wine in your mouth, you swish it around a little bit, you consume it, and then you go ahead and you get a little bit of this you get this like saliva starting to happen on the side of your mouth, or this tingling feeling on the side of your mouth here. And the more saliva you start to build up, the more acidic the wine is. And you really want that for food, right? You really want, you know, really nice high acid wines because they go well with food. And then also you can kind of store them and keep them for a little bit longer and watch them kind of develop. And then I saw a question about it being oak. So with this particular wine, I know it is oak. It's not like a lot of new fresh oak, but I know that there is a little bit of oak on here, but not enough to push the price point. So like French oak, usually what's used in California is really expensive. So so really with this wine, I think he's really trying to showcase the fruit and really showcase the terroir. There is a little bit of what's called malolactic fermentation, where you are moving a lactic acid to a mallow acid, so it's a little bit softer, a little bit rounder on the palate. Because if you didn't, it'd just be really lean and austere and kind of offensive type of acidity, not something that you would really want to drink. Um, so you might get some of that roundness, which sometimes kind of hides itself as like a little bit of oak. But this one has a little bit of oak, but it's used, and I don't think that it's really imparting too much flavor. I hope that answered the question. If it didn't, please let me know. Any other comments on this particular wine? Don't be shy. It's a safe space, I promise.
Walter said it lingers more on the front of the palate than the rear, but not by much though,
hmm
and not
Okay.
overpowering with the oak.
Yeah, I would agree as well. It's not super overpowering with the oak. Um, I think, as I'm going back to it again, it actually lends itself to just a little bit more oak than I thought at first. Maybe because I had a glass beforehand, but it does lean itself to a little bit more oak than I thought before. So there might be partial new oak on this particular one. Okay. All right. And then moving right along, we'll get into the House of Brown. Now, House of Brown um, comes from the Brown Estate family, if you will. So the Brown Estate Vineyards or estate actually was founded in 1980. So you might notice like this nice rundown house here in this picture with like Michael Myers standing there with a knife probably in his hands. That's kind of a representation of what the ranch looked like that the Browns purchased back in 1980. So you have these people saying, all right, cool, we're going to buy this ranch. It's run down. We're going to renovate it. And they do so. And then they decide to plant Vitis vinifera grapes, or as we know, wine grapes, on the land. And they are the first Black family to do so in Napa Valley. So they go ahead and decide to do this. They have three young kids, and they start selling all these grapes to all these bigger houses. So for example, you have farmers from everywhere, and then you have these big brands that will source their grapes from different vineyards or different farmers, if you will. I mean, essentially at this point, they're farmers. So they decided to go ahead and start selling grapes to these people, and that's kind of how they made their living. Now, fast forward to 1996, what you'll see is that the kids decided, you know what, we're grown now, we can make a little bit more decisions, and we want to take this in a different direction, and we actually want to start bottling wine, start selling our wine. So I think that their very first vintage was probably about 1997, was probably their first vintage of releasing, and I think that was a Zinfandel that they released. Now, they've been doing this for quite some time, and this is actually going to be their second label. So on their first label, or the first kind of like flagship label that they have, you'll see in the middle like there's this round picturesque thing, and that's going to represent a scarab beetle, which in ancient Egypt was kind of a symbolism for amazing agriculture. So they took that particular symbol, and that's found on all of their wine labels. Now, on this particular one, I don't see it, but I really love the label. Just like the photo just represents a lot of different shades of brown and black people and people of color. So I really like what they did with this particular label. And I recently had this wine for a tasting while I was in California and thought that it was wonderful. And so I wanted to share it with you all. Hopefully you were able to pick that wine up. So without further ado, I'm done talking about the wine. Let's go ahead and jump into it and actually taste the wine, okay? All right, so if you already pulled up, let's get into it, all right? I think that this has really nice color. I think it's a little bit lighter than the previous, a little bit lighter than the longevity wine. I'm drinking the 2020 California wine. And I'm back up for a quick second. When you see a wine, and normally when it's labeled something generic like California or Washington, that means that they can source their grapes from wherever in California. And usually it doesn't necessarily point out quality. I'm usually the type of person that I go ahead and I look for very specific regions, very small regions, family owned type of wines to kind of find quality. But these wines are actually really decent, like very decent. And these are entry level wines. So if you're looking at the wines or you're tasting the wines, you're like, oh, these are really delicious, I love them, great. You're probably really going to fall in love with the other items that they have available. So keep that in mind. All right. So when I smell this, or when you all smell this, what do you smell? Mm. Ooh. So this one's giving me apples. Like I get like this yellow and green apple thing going on. There's a little bit of like this creaminess to it, almost like a yogurt. Pepper. You could possibly be tasting pepper. Like, are we talking like black pepper, or are we talking like green pepper? So are we thinking more of like vegetable pepper, or are we thinking more like spice pepper? Because normally if you're smelling like green paper, Lord, if you're smelling green pepper, or typically it's green pepper, it's usually because it was probably a really hot vintage and the grapes got a little sunburned a little bit, so to speak, and that will come through on the wine, on the finished product. Or maybe we're talking about black pepper, and like black pepper is very evident in like wines like Syrah will have that kind of black pepper thing going on. Mm. Oh, let's taste it. Okay, see, now I need to know, do you all like the longevity better, or do you like the brown better? So like if you got both, like let me know in the chat which one you like better, the brown, the House of Brown Chardonnay, or the longevity Chardonnay. And then in the end, if you want to know my opinion, I can always come back, revisit it at the end where we'll have like a little Q&A session, right? Oh, it's a good wine though. Any comments for this wine? Shanice, Miss Foster, yeah. House of Brown better? All right, cool. I like it. Anybody else?
I will say I'm not usually a Chardonnay drinker, but I like the longevity.
Yeah, really? Okay, cool. Nice. Okay, so let's move on to 4-to-1 flavor of longevity. Like it. Okay, I'm loving the comments right now. All right, so our next wine up on our list is going to be Fete De Rose. Now, Fete De Rose is also a really cool brand that started not too long ago. So the very first picture that you're going to see right near the bottles towards the top is going to be a picture of a gentleman named Don Burston, who is the actual owner of this particular brand. He's also a HBCU grad from Clark Atlanta University, and all around really cool guy. So I went to school here in Miami at Johnson Wells, and I was a part of an organization called Iota Phi Theta Fraternity Incorporated. This gentleman is a part of a fraternity within our same family, if you will, so to speak, called Kappa Alpha Psi. So, and I had a chance to hang out with this guy like 2 weeks ago, and he is a really big personality. I'm sitting there with him and his PR manager, and I mean, the guy is talking so bad about the PR manager, and obviously, like they've been friends for a long time, and just really funny guy. And the one thing that I really liked about him is very humble and actually kind of shy. His wife is an actress, and she's been on like a couple different shows and is awesome as well. But I love the fact that he's kind of like on the shyer side, but like is this big name guy. And here's the reason why his name is a little big in the wine industry, so or in the beverage industry in general. So Dane used to work for a group called LVMH. Now LVMH is Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy. So just from the name, Louis Vuitton, Moet, Hennessy, you can probably tell that this is like a high-end company. And there's not one single thing, probably somewhere in your house, you probably carry something from LVMH. Like you probably have something that's owned by LVMH group. Like ladies, if you have Sephora, like if you get your makeup done and you have Sephora somewhere in the house, that's Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy. Fellas, if you got anything that's Dior or Christian Dior, like that is LVMH. You have anything that's Louis Vuitton, obviously that's going to be a part of the company. Gentlemen, if you got a Hublot, ladies, if you got a Hublot, like that's going to be LVMH. If you have anything from like Rihanna and Fenty, that is them. All right. Now on the beverage side, they do a lot of things. They do like really big stuff. So they do Veuve Clicquot. So if you've ever had Veuve Clicquot, boom, there you go. Moet, obviously, Moet and Chandon, that whole portfolio, anything Moet is theirs. Dom Perignon is theirs. Ruinart, which is probably one of the most classic, iconic champagnes that is out there. And they own Ruinart as well. So kind of a big conglomerate. Now, I know everyone's probably thinking like, oh man, why is Jay-Z on here? That's weird. Well, LVMH actually acquired about 50% of Ace of Spades. They invested into that. I believe that was maybe, I don't even remember the number. I want to say it was like 500 million. I think they invested into and they put into Ace of Spades. And so this is one of those brands that Dane used to work with, like Belvedere Grey Goose, Moet and Chandon, Dom Perignon, and then Ace of Spades, obviously, as well, for a short period of time as well. Now, after leaving LVMH, because he felt like LVMH was not marketing to everyone. You know, when it came down to people of color, it was kind of just like, we don't really need to market to that particular demographic. And, you know, he was kind of upset about it, I'm sure. So he decided to leave and do his own thing. He ended up meeting, you know, this gentleman from Saint Tropez while he was there. And this gentleman actually owns one of the oldest vineyards or oldest sites in Provence and makes beautiful wine. And they talked about his dream of wanting to make this wine, and they brokered a deal. Deal got done. And this was maybe about 2017, maybe 2016 when this happened. And he started bottling this rosé. And he started here in Miami, like going around to different accounts that he used to visit when he worked for LVMH, and you know, got the door shut in his face a couple of times, but a couple of people picked it up. And then all of a sudden it started to gain a little bit of traction, right? So this is a pretty young brand, and to be doing what he's doing at this age of the brand, I think is really amazing, because it's been less than 5 years, and he has just brokered a partnership with Constellation Brands, who's like doing everything and everywhere, and it's a huge company. Now, the one thing I didn't touch on, yes, I know, you're probably like, okay, he's going to talk about Oprah now. Yes. So the reason why you see Oprah here is Dane wanted to create this particular brand. And it was like, in my head, the thing that kind of resonates with me is like, he wanted everyone to be a part of it. He wanted everyone to be able to have rosé, which is why it's called La Fete, which is like the party of rosé or the party rosé, or, you know, depending on language, it could be the rosé party. And it's meant for everyone, not just one particular demographic, not, you know, not for just, you know, one particular age group, but for everyone. So his whole thing was like, you get rosé, you get rosé, you get rosé, everybody gets rosé. All right. So without further ado, I am done talking. Let's jump into this rosé so we can go ahead and taste it and see what all the hype is about, right? Now, hopefully y'all just pouring yourselves a little taste, so that way you're not just chugging down a whole glass of wine. I mean, if you are, you probably at home. And if you're not, it's your prerogative. Do whatever it is that you like. Like I said before, it's a safe space. So y'all let me know what y'all think about this Le Fete de Rose. First off, I love the color, especially the color in the bottle. I think that the label is really nice. It's very elegant and classy, and straight to the point. There's really no fuss about it. And then the wine itself, you know, the color of the wine, I think is just really nice, almost copper salmon type of color. Like, and then on the nose, it's really fresh and fruit forward. So like there's tons of like this raspberry and bright red fruit thing going on. And then, you know, kind of on the back, I get a little bit of this nuttiness, like almost like almonds or like hazelnut, maybe walnut. Mm, but it kind of has like a little bit of a nutty quality to it as well. There's some fresh flowers, I think, as well. Mm. All right, let's taste it. Ashley's like, I got the Lafette. Nice. Ooh. So this is so like it's interesting going from the Chardonnay to the rosé. I feel like there's a little bit of a palate shock. So like if you get that palate shock at first, go in for another like sip or two, swish it all around so that way you kind of get your palate, you know, a little used to something different. Because the Chardonnays can be quite heavy, whereas this is a little bit lighter in body. And then also I feel like this is a lot drier as well. And if I didn't say, you know, one thing I always tell people is with wine tasting, wine is like art and it's very subjective. So like no one can really tell you um what you taste, but um, you know, or smell, because it's very sensitive to like what your background is, what your upbringing was, and your memory of different smells. So you say you smell, I don't know, bonbons, then great, that's what's in there. So don't be afraid to share, especially with me. Like I embrace it. I love it. Mhm. All right. Couldn't find any Boston. Cool. Apricot. I like that. Apricot. I see a lot of people weren't able to get it. Cool. So that's the funny thing about why you had so many options to choose from. And I want to touch on that too really quickly. Is like the difficulty in finding these wines is nothing in comparison to the difficulty of trying to get the wines that I think deserve to be on shelves to be on shelves. So like, as you know, after prohibition, we have like this three-tier system where like everything has to be distributed, right? Or your state will control what is allowed to come into that particular state. And usually, it's pretty strict. Now, distributors won't pick something up because they won't pick up a wine because it doesn't have enough production, right? It doesn't, they don't produce 100,000 cases. So they don't want to pick it up because it's more of a nationwide thing that they want to do. But what that does is it makes it really hard and really tough for the consumer to be adventurous and actually be able to, grab these particular wines. So people of color uh, are the most affected in this way because there's only so many people that could have that production. And then also, um, the representation within the wine industry is, like I said before, that tenth of a percent. So with only being a tenth of a percent, which means that we're really just getting into, embracing Black and Brown people in the wine industry, it's really hard to find their wines and to get them. So if you struggled a little bit, it's slightly intentional to kind of prove a point, but also at the same time, I'm sorry that you couldn't pick up this particular wine. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into the Black Girl Magic Rosé. Now, this particular brand has a really interesting story. And Lawrence says, I got this one. Yeah. So, Lawrence, I better see you in the comments, man. I want to see you in the comments commenting and let me know what you taste now. All right. So this particular I love it. So this particular brand has a really interesting story. So let's start with this picture of Sister Sister, right? I don't know how many of you might remember this sitcom, but I thought it was really funny. These sisters interacting and watching them grow up as I grew up, I thought was really cool. But so if you remember the story of Sister Sister, the best show, absolutely. So the story of Sister Sister, they're twins. They were separated at birth and ran into each other at the mall. So like I remember like there being some type of like imagery or visual to like where they're kind of like looking at each other like, oh my gosh, like you look like me. Like, is this a real thing? If I poke you, is that not a mirror? Kind of thing going on. So and then they get reunited. They, their prospective parents move in together and like it's a whole thing, right? And that's kind of their story. And that's, kind of how it's based. And they go through like learning about each other, learning about themselves, and kind of growing up as twins. So now, this particular brand, as you can see, the owners are closest to the bottle with glasses in their hands, cheersing to us. So cheers to Robin and Andrea McBride. This story is a little interesting. So these are sisters that had absolutely no idea about each other at all. Not twins, but didn't know about each other at all. one day, this gentleman passes away, which happens to be their father, and from like stomach cancer. And he reaches out to the family, before his death, and says, one of my dying wishes is basically I want my two children, my two daughters, to meet each other. And the family's like, all right, we'll make it happen. They didn't have any information, so they were trying to reach out and trying to reach out. And one of them lived in Monterey, and the other one lived in New Zealand. So they're reaching out and they're writing letters, and finally they get this response. And um, one of the sisters gets a letter about her father passing away, and she was obviously upset about that, but also the fact that she had a sister. So they finally get together and they're at the airport and they get off the plane and they're on the tarmac kind of walking towards each other, or one sister's walking towards the other, and she's like, wow, that looks like my reflection, but she notices that the reflection isn't moving. And, there's this moment of like, wow, the only family that I knew is here in front of me, or died, excuse me, passed away. And now I have this new sister that I didn't know about. And then they connect and they get together and they're talking. And it turns out that both sisters in their respective places had a love for wine and was doing something in the wine industry. So in Monterey, obviously, it's like Central California type of situation where like there's vines everywhere. And in New Zealand, I mean, New Zealand's known for wine, right? So they get together and they bond over wine and decide to start this particular wine brand. And this was back in like 2013, right? These ladies have built an entire empire full of women. So not only is this one Black owned, it's also woman owned and woman ran. So their executive team, all women, their winemaker, a woman. And now, they have this empire that's within Walmart and Target and all these big retailers nationwide. And Black Girl Magic Rosé or Black Girl Magic is just one of their brands. So they have the McBride Sisters collection, which is kind of a little bit more of their classic stuff. They have like this really nice Brut Rosé from New Zealand that's really amazing, absolutely amazing. If you find it, it's like under $20, and they have a huge commitment to keeping wines affordable for people. So if you pick up that Brut Rosé, which is a sparkling rosé from New Zealand, it is absolutely amazing, and like it's probably like $20, but it's definitely worth somewhere around 35 to 40, I would say. So if you have that, let's go ahead, let's taste it, pour it up, let's taste it a little bit, and tell me what you get. Like I get like this cotton candy thing. Like I've tasted this so many times. Oh, yeah, I think it's really cool that they're both from winemaking places, that's for sure. I get like this cotton candy thing. There's also kind of like this candied watermelon thing, and then a little bit of this creamy action going on. And like raspberries, if I didn't say raspberries. Melon, like cantaloupe. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So I love when people comment because like sometimes like that's why we have tasting groups as sommeliers is um, someone's nose might be different than ours, right? Their memories might be different than ours. So somebody might say like, "Oh, I smell like honeydew and cantaloupe," and I'm like, "Oh my God, that is what that is. Absolutely!" Like, and I've been searching for it. So it's like, what is that? So yeah, absolutely. I can pick up on the cantaloupe and like that melony thing going on. That's awesome. Okay, this wine has some really decent acid. Finishes a little short, but it's got really good acid. I think this is like definitely something that I would sit outside on my patio and like I would absolutely just crush this bottle. This is a bottle that you have at a backyard barbecue. That's what I would do. I would do a backyard barbecue with this and just kind of hang out and pour this up for absolutely everybody. Like buy a case of it because it's cheap enough to buy a case and won't like really hurt your pocket too much. Buy a case of it, put it in the refrigerator, put it on ice, and then you just kind of pour it up, and you just have like, hot dogs and burgers and chicken and like shrimp or whatever else you want, chilling on the vineyard. I like your style. Absolutely, absolutely. All right, so now we're gonna move into a little bit of red. Now this is Andre Mack. Andre Mack was, as you can see, there's like a picture of Neo up here. Love this picture. So Andre Mack was like an investment guy, right? Working and making good money, but like wasn't happy, but loved wine. He ends up leaving his industry, getting into wine, getting a job as a sommelier. And so he ends up really getting into wine and doing this competition and being named the best young sommelier in America. So he gets this distinction, and immediately he's hired for the French Laundry. And if you know anything about the French Laundry, whew, boy, absolutely amazing place. I haven't been, although I do have a standing invite to go and dine, but the French Laundry is where he ends up working at as a sommelier, and then takes on a position with the same group, which is a Thomas Keller group, and opens up or works at Per Se in New York, which is like the creme de la creme of New York dining. So he does that. He's very successful as a sommelier, and then turns out to say, all right, cool, I want to do something a little bit different. And he ends up doing his own wine, and found his own wine called Maison Noirs. This is the OPP that we're going to be tasting. So if you haven't opened it up already, go ahead and open it, and let's go ahead and get it poured up. And as we're pouring up, I will continue to kind of talk a little bit more about the brand. So Maison Noir wines, all of his wines are going to be coming out of like the Washington, Oregon area, which just prime for really good, delicious wines. He also has a book called 99 Bottles. I think I have it somewhere behind me. Yeah, 99 Bottles right there behind me. Really good read. And like, it really just kind of goes through a lot of the wines that he's tasted and the guide that, he has for tasting really amazing wines and elevating your game in the wine game, if you will. Okay, so without further ado, let's go ahead and taste this. This is OPP. And every time I say OPP, I just want to say, yeah, you know me, but like, are you down with OPP? And this is other people's Pinot. Please, if you know the name of the group, because he's a hip hop fan, if you know the name of the group, please type it in the chat. It's the OPP song. Type the name of the group. Yeah, I see you. Naughty by nature. That's right. Naughty by nature. Not because I hate you. All right. So, wow. Other people's Pinot. So he does a Pinot Noir, which this is, and then also he does a Pinot Gris as well, which is fantastic as well. All right. Ooh, man. So this is really cool. Like, there's like this really nice, like, candy, not candy, but like this really nice red fruit thing going on with like cherries, a little bit like Bing cherries and like this cola cherry thing. And then there's also kind of like this greenness to the wine as well. There's some mushrooms and like fresh herbs and a little bit of like soil. Like, and I know what you're probably thinking, like, how do you know what soil smells like? And I know what soil smells like only because of like, I had to train myself to know what fresh soil smells like. So like, I remember going to the grocery store and just like grabbing fruit. This was pre-COVID, and like scratching and sniffing, right? I had to say that, pre-COVID, well before pre-COVID. And like I would scratch and sniff fruit, and that's how like, or I'd go and smell fresh soil or fresh dirt or whatever. So, but it definitely has like this really nice earthy, mushroomy, earthy kind of like tone to it as well, which is really nice. So, all right. And on the palate, it also kind of follows through with that as well, which is really nice. All right. So our last wine for tonight is going to be the Longevity Cabernet. I would love to know what other folks are smelling. Like if you smell something different, please, by all means, please feel free to let me know. I love to know what it is that you are smelling. So last wine, last glass, and then we're going to get into a little Q&A session here as well. Okay. And that way we can chat. All right. So this is longevity wines. We already covered one of the longevity wines. I'm a huge fan of Phil Long's. Like this guy's like a big teddy bear. Like if you ever see Phil Long, he's my height. He's like 6'3", maybe 6'2". I'm a little taller than him. Like 6'1", 6'2", and he's a pretty hefty guy. Not flat or fluffy, but just like hefty. Like clearly he probably played some type of football or some type of like, or he just worked out a lot at some point, like big guy and just, you know, kind of broad. And doesn't look like the kind of guy that you would like want to make upset. But when you meet him, he is so nice, so kind, and so giving and like so loving. He's literally like, he's like a light-skinned teddy bear. Like, I mean, just the nicest, sweetest guy. Love him. Absolutely love this guy. And so, yeah, we're featuring his longevity Cabernet Sauvignon. I highly encourage you, highly encourage you to go to his website, Google longevity wines, and definitely get yourself a bottle of something. You know, his wines are just phenomenal. I have maybe 3 or 4 that are just laying around here. But anyway, so let's get into his Cabernet Sauvignon. And what I wanted to do here is I kind of left here a little bit of like wine taste profile with and a flavor wheel, if you will, of what Cabernet Sauvignon can kind of give you. So there's all these like really cool things that you can get from oak, which this does have. And then there's like some herbal qualities and like a little bit of red fruit. And then you also get kind of like these dried fruit and earthy qualities too. Somebody said pumpkin. I love your style. I love it. All right, cool. So what else are we getting? Oh man, does anybody get chocolate? Got the tobacco? Yeah, there's definitely tobacco on here as well. Absolutely. I get a little bit of eucalyptus. I think eucalyptus is here. I think chocolate is here. Definitely oak. But let's dive deeper into that oak, Kyle. Like what is it that you get from that oak? Let's take a look at that flavor wheel and say, all right, is it nutmeg? Is it vanilla? Like, is it baking spices? And if you don't know, it's perfectly fine. Say, I don't know. Lauren, yeah, chocolate for sure. This is like chocolate covered cherries. Tobacco. There's definitely a little bit of like this black, like ground black pepper. Eucalyptus, mint a little bit. Chocolate mint. I see you, Trevor, chocolate mint. We are now longevity fans. I love it. Tell them Ray sent you. Listen, I might have to get you guys a discount code. I'm gonna do a live with him. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna reach out. I'm gonna do a live with Phil, and we're just gonna talk. And I'm gonna see if I can get a discount code. I'm gonna call him tomorrow. Now you're talking. So stay tuned for that. If you're not following me on Instagram, please feel free to follow me on Instagram. I am at the Royal Vines, just like how the shirt says. And I'm going to do a live with him. I'll get him on the line. Some vanilla too? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Cool. I love this one. This one's so good. And for like 14 bucks here in Florida, I mean, that's not a bad buy. Like, you can bet $15 on this. This is not bad at all. Again, this is one of those wines. Get a case, like backyard boogie, or in California we call it a kickback, and like just a social gathering, a soiree if you want to be a little bourgeois. And you know, you have a soiree, and you know, you pour up some longevity wines. Mm, fantastic. All right, floor is open for questions, ladies and gents. So please ask questions, comments, concerns, so on and so forth. You didn't like the wines, you hated the wines, you love the wines. I love questions.
If you'd like to put them in the chat, feel free, or if you want to unmute and ask Ray, feel free to do so. You can use either raise your hand or just unmute, and we'll be happy to answer them.
Yeah.
When is the next one, Kyle? That's a good question. We're going to be doing these every other month, probably November or December will be the next Sip with JWU.
Lawrence, please feel free, unmute yourself and holler at me.
Hey, how you doing? Lawrence Rock, class of '96. And just want to say, you know, thank you to the alumni, everyone for putting this together, and thank you for educating us on these wines. My question is more general. For those who are interested in learning more about wine and really trying to try different flavors, etc. Sometimes it's really overwhelming when you go to a liquor store or a wine shop, see so many bottles. Where would you recommend would be a great starting point? Should someone start with a Cabernet, Reds? What would you recommend for someone?
All right. So my question to you would be, what do you know that you like? And what do you know that you don't like? So like, let's concentrate on what you do like. What have you tasted today that you like?
Well, I know that I know that I like white wines.
Okay, cool. So let's start there. We can start with, you know, we can start with whatever you want. You can start with Pinot Grigio. You can start with Sauvignon Blanc, and like taste Sauvignon Blancs from different parts of the world, right? And I think a really good book to kind of have to taste with, and you'll see like this tasting profile that we have here, along with like this little flavor wheel that comes from Wine Folly, and they have a book. She's a sommelier, and really amazing, and an author, and she has kind of like revolutionized wine and making it more approachable and warm, with visuals and things of that nature. Like, I love her books. So I have both of her books, and like, you just look at Sauvignon Blanc, the Sauvignon Blanc page, and it looked just like the one that we had up, and you taste a bunch of Sauvignon Blancs, you know, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I do get like this lemongrass thing, or I do get grapefruit, I do get like the citrus flowers, or whatever the case might be. And then you're like, okay, cool, I now know what Sauvignon Blanc is from different parts of the world. And then you move on to something else. Like, maybe you get tired of Sauvignon Blanc, and now you're like, you know what, I'm doing Chardonnay, but I don't want to do Chardonnay from California because everybody does Chardonnay from California. Maybe I do Chardonnay from France, and I do Chablis because it's the same thing. Chardonnay just made very differently. And now you're tasting Chardonnay from France, you know, from Chablis and white Burgundies, so on and so forth. And then you can say, oh, okay, cool. I get like this limestone chalky thing, and like it's super green apples and like really high acidity, and you go from there. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
when is your wine coming out? So follow me on Instagram. Stay tuned. That's how I'm going to answer that one. But I appreciate that. I've had that question come out a lot, and what I'm doing right now is really just doing the work on my palate and really getting it back up to speed how I want it to be. Yeah, my handle is going to be at the Royal Vines. Thank you so much, Lauren, for putting that up. Just as you see on the screen. And that's on all social media platforms, except for TikTok. TikTok is a little different. I'm working on getting the handle situated on TikTok. But Instagram, Facebook, Twitter is all at the Royal Vines. And I'm most active on Instagram. So you'll see my face there. And then also, you know, YouTube is Royal Vines, Miami. But yeah, working on, maybe one day soon, you might see a Royal Vines wine. Any other questions? Oh, that's it. Guys, I really like to hear myself talk. Please.
Oh, hey, Ray.
Hey,
How are you?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Good, thank you. This was great. Thank you so much for putting this on for us.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Okay.
So I actually have a question. I'm Allie's friend. I didn't go to your college. And so I'm not an alumni. I'm actually crashing your party. So thank you, Allie, for inviting me.
Not a crash at all.
So I know we were talking about a lot of American vintners, Black American vintners who, are, showcased today. But do we know if there are any that have some old world blends and not necessarily California sourced? And I can tell because I love a lot of old world wines.
Yes. Oh, so all right. So old world that's Black owned. There's not a lot. The one that comes to mind right away is going to be a champagne producer called Marie Cesar, and they are not necessarily in. They're not in the States yet. I actually need to follow up with them because that's something that I wanted to carry on the list here at Michael's Genuine down here in Miami. But I don't think that they have an importer just yet. So if you know anybody in the importing game, Marie Cesar is a champagne. The champagnes are really delicious. But that's the only one that comes to mind. Oh, yes, absolutely. In Italy, there's a producer there's a producer who actually entered into one of the competitions per my request. And I'd have to follow up to get his information to you, but it's definitely Italian wines. And I will have some reviews actually coming out with his wines very soon.
Thank you.
So please do me a favor. If you could do me a favor and like DM me on Instagram, or like if you hit that contact button on my Instagram, that is my cell phone number. So like if you all ever have any questions as far as wine, like you're in the store and you can't decide, shoot me a text message. Like that'll be the quickest way. Or if but try and do it prior to getting to the store, just because sometimes I'm on the floor and I won't be able to answer. Yeah. But like if you have questions about wine that you want to get to me right away, like you can hit that contact button. That's just for you guys. So don't share that with a lot of different people, okay? Just for you.
Okay, we have some questions in the chat that I'd love to get answered before we close the session out. Shanice is wondering, what is the next trend in the wine world?
The next trend in the wine world, that's a really good question. I think what you're gonna see soon is you're gonna see a lot of, somewhere you're going to see like more northern wine regions becoming prevalent on wine lists. With climate change and global warming, you're starting to see a lot more colder regions that used to be very cold become warmer. So I think what we're going to see is we're going to see an influx of wines from regions that normally didn't produce wine or weren't known for wine, and actually like being really, really amazing. Like the Finger Lakes in New York, like that's going to be a whole section on my wine list, like once we reopen the restaurant. And Finger Lakes hasn't had a whole lot of exposure, but like Finger Lakes is doing amazing with wine right now. Chablis is doing amazing with wine right now. And like it's just getting warmer, the more northernly grown wine regions. So I think that's something that you'll see very soon.
I love that. I'm a native upstate New Yorker, and I've been to the Finger Lakes many times, so I can attest to their quality. So
listen, if you got to connect, I need to connect in Finger Lakes because I need to get up there.
It's worth a trip. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we have one last question from Ashley, and she's a fellow Miami grad from the class of 2011, and she is wondering how the Miami wine and beverage scene has changed in the last decade.
Oh gosh, you don't even talk about the last decade. Just talk about the last 6 to 9 months. You've had a lot of different New York like restaurant groups coming down here and investing in properties and really investing their time and their money into the community here. So like you have like Major Food Group who's down here now, and like you have Carbone, and like there was only a coat in New York, now there's a coat in Miami. So there's a lot of different New York food groups and hospitality groups that are coming down here and actually opening things up. So the wine is going to change, the food is changing. What that change is going to look like, and if it's sustainable, is kind of my question right now. Because Miami is very different. You know, New York is one thing, LA is another thing. Miami's a whole nother ball game. So I'd love to see that. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay, we have one last question, Dion, just snuck in there. What is the impact of the fires on California wines?
So the impact on the California wines is, one, there's some properties that weren't able to produce fruit, or they were producing fruit and obviously that fruit was destroyed. A lot of these people are just very simple farmers, and you know, they live off their land. You won't necessarily see anything in the bottles. What you'll see is more production levels for the wines being depleted. So, you know, maybe X, Y, and Z winery was producing, you know, 10,000 cases of wine, and this year they're only going to be producing 5,000 or 2,000 or not at all for that particular vintage. So you might see prices go up a little bit, and so that way they can kind of supplement and make it through their year. But you won't necessarily see anything in the wines per se. Usually what happens is they'll go ahead and test those wines, make sure that there isn't. Thank you so much, Ashley. I appreciate that. For some cool. But usually they'll taste those wines, and if there's any type of like smoke taint or any type of smokiness that's not supposed to be in the wine, they'll go ahead and they'll destroy it. They'll get rid of it.
Goodness. Well, Ray, thank you very, very much for this amazing session. I'm going to turn it over to Lori Zabata, Director of Alumni Relations, to close us out.
Awesome.
Thanks, Lauren. Thank you, Ray, for leading us on tonight's tasting with Black-owned wines. It was such an informative discussion, and we're grateful that you shared your time with us this evening. Your extensive knowledge of these labels, the history of BIPOC winemaking, and passion for beverage education is not only impressive, it's also greatly appreciated. I'd like to also thank the Alumni Relations team for their help behind the scenes, especially Lauren Anderson for her work to bring this program to us. Finally, thank you to all of our alumni and guests in attendance tonight. Your registration for this event included a donation to the College of Hospitality Management, which will go to work immediately to directly support our innovative students and educators. Donations to the College of Hospitality Management help prepare JWU students to become leaders in an evolving global hospitality industry. And as an alumni donor, you also contribute to the growth of JWU's reputation, which increases the value of your own JWU degree. Thank you again for your support. We sincerely hope that you enjoyed this evening's session, Sip with JWU Black-owned wines, part of the JWU for You family of programming. Through JWU for You, alumni can engage in informative and interesting discussions related to professional development, social, and avid interest topics. For the full listing of upcoming events, please visit our events calendar at alumni.jwu.edu. We appreciate your attendance and wish you a wonderful night. Thank you so much.